The city of Veltharum burned. Screams of the dying filled the air, mingling with the shriek of collapsing structures. The acrid scent of smoke and scorched metal choked the atmosphere. High above, warships dueled in the sky, exchanging blasts of energy that sent molten debris crashing into the streets. For the Theri, this was the end. For Elias Vance, this was just another battlefield. He sprinted through the war-torn district, his pulse hammering against his ribs. The Kevreth, a reptilian species known for their brutality, had descended upon Veltharum like a plague. No negotiations. No mercy. They wanted the city erased. Elias had seen extermination before, but he had never seen it like this. The Theri were an advanced species, their cities shining beacons of progress, their knowledge centuries ahead of humanity's. And yet, for all their technology, their bodies were weak, fragile. The fire spread faster than their defenses could hold, consuming their world while they ran. But not all of them could run. A high-pitched wail cut through the chaos. Elias froze. He knew that sound. A child's cry. ####a choice in the inferno. The flames surged, devouring the market district. Fire licked across shattered stalls and overturned hovercarts. The heat was unbearable, but Elias didn't hesitate. He turned toward the source of the cry. Vance, where the hell are you going? The voice crackled in his earpiece, his squadmate, Sergeant Cole. We have to evac now? There's a kid in there, Elias barked, already moving. Vance? He killed the channel. No time for arguments. The child's cry grew weaker. Elias charged forward, boots pounding against the crumbling pavement. His combat suit's heat shielding was good, but not invincible. The warning indicators were already flashing. Temperature critical. Structural integrity at 63%. Didn't matter. He vaulted over burning wreckage, his body moving on instinct. His visor flared with heat signatures. Most were motionless. But one, a small one, shuddered behind the remnants of a collapsed building. The child. And they weren't alone. ###the predator in the flames. A Kevreth warrior stood between Elias and the child. It was huge, towering over 7 feet, its scaled hide reflecting the firelight in hues of red and gold. Serrated armor plates jutted from its body, and its claws gleamed with fresh blood. Its mandibles clicked in anticipation as it loomed over the trembling Theri child. The kid whimpered. Elias moved. The Kevreth saw him too late. Crack. A single shot rang out. Armor-piercing, anti-personnel round ***. The bullet punched through the Kevreth's skull, and the creature crumpled without a sound. Elias didn't stop. The fire closed in as he reached the child, small, barely more than a handful of limbs and furred appendages. Their large, glassy eyes locked onto his. Terror. They thought they were going to die. Not on his watch. ###, the impossible walk. Elias scooped the kid into his arms. They were so light, barely weighing more than a field pack. Their fur was damp with sweat, their tiny hands clinging to his armor. The moment he turned, a structural alarm blared in his suit. The building behind them collapsed. No way back. No easy route out. Just fire, a wall of it stretching in every direction. His only way out was through it. Elias tightened his grip on the child. Hold on, kid. Then he ran straight into the fire. The heat hit like a hammer. His armor screamed in protest. The HUD flickered, warning systems flashing red. The air became hell itself, every breath like swallowing molten iron. Temperature critical. Structural integrity at 39%. The child whimpered, burying their face against his chest. Elias didn't stop. Flames bit at his legs. The suit's outer layers began to peel. His skin boiled. Temperature critical. Structural integrity at 22%. Keep moving. Every step was a battle. His body screamed for relief, for oxygen, for anything but this relentless agony. But he kept going. The Theri were fragile. But humans? Humans walked through fire. ###, the moment that changed a species. Elias burst from the flames, the child still clutched in his arms. The Theri soldiers waiting outside froze. Their large, delicate eyes widened in horror, then disbelief, as they saw the burning, smoking human emerge from the inferno. Elias collapsed to one knee. His body trembled, pain surging through every nerve. His armor was ruined, the plating blackened and cracked. His visor flickered and died. But he was alive. And so was the child. The Theri officers rushed forward, pulling the kid from his arms. A wave of chittering voices, rapid and urgent, filled the air. But one voice, the voice of an elder, rose above them all. He walked through fire for one of our own. Silence. The Theri looked at Elias like he was something impossible. For centuries, the Theri had viewed humanity as lesser. Physically weak. Biologically inferior. A young species, reckless and loud. But in that moment, as they stared at the human who had defied fire and death to save one of their own, their entire perception of humanity changed. And so did their future. Elias Vance's world was pain. Even with the advanced medical gel hissing against his charred skin, his nerves still burned. His armor, once a gleaming black exosuit, was now a melted ruin clinging to his body. His visor was gone, his breathing labored, and every inch of his flesh screamed in protest. But he was alive. And the child had survived. The Theri had seen. And now, everything was different. ###the human in the alien camp. Elias lay on a makeshift medbed inside the Theri forward outpost. The city outside still burned, but this sector was holding, barely. Theri healers hovered around him, their elongated fingers trembling as they hesitated before touching him. They had no idea what to do with him. Humans were new to the Theri. Their physiology was different. The healers knew how to mend their own kind, delicate bodies, regenerative tissues, fragile bones. But Elias? He was something else entirely. The elder from before, **Vareshtel**, stood nearby watching in silence. His violet eyes flickered between Elias and the child he had saved. Elias finally broke the silence. "How's the kid?" Murmurs passed between the Theri before Vareshtel answered. His voice was deep, solemn. "The child is unscathed. Your intervention was beyond expectation." Elias exhaled. "Good. Then I did my job." A ripple of unease passed through the Theri. They still didn't understand. Vareshtel took a step forward. "You defied death for a child not of your kind. You ran through fire that would have unmade any Theri. Your body is damaged, yet you still speak. Why?" Elias frowned. "What kind of question is that?" Vareshtel's expression remained unreadable. "One that my people now ask themselves?" Elias grunted, shifting on the bed. His muscles screamed, but he forced himself upright. The Theri tensed as if expecting him to collapse. He didn't. He gestured toward the child, who clung to a healer's robes, watching him with wide, golden eyes. They were in danger. I could help. So I did. A silence fell over the tent. The Theri whispered among themselves. The idea was so alien to them. Not the concept of saving a child, but the way Elias had done it. Humans were supposed to be lesser. Their physiology weaker. Their bodies fragile. Yet Elias had walked through fire. And he had survived. ###the war still rages. The comms unit in Elias' ruined armor crackled to life. "Vance? You still breathing?" It was Sergeant Cole. Elias tapped his wrist, activating his communicator. "Barely. Good enough." Cole's voice was tense. "We've got a problem." Elias already knew what was coming. "Kevreth?" "Yeah. And they're regrouping." Vareshtel's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" Elias turned to the elder. "The Kevreth don't just burn cities for fun. They wipe them out completely. If they left, it means they're coming back. With more." A ripple of dread passed through the Theri. They were not warriors. The Kevreth were. Elias swung his legs off the bed. Pain flared, but he didn't let it stop him. The Theri gasped as he stood, his burned flesh still raw, his body still trembling from the ordeal. Vareshtel stepped forward. "You need to rest. Your injuries." "No time." Elias cracked his knuckles. "You want your people to survive?" The elder hesitated, then nodded. "Then we fight. And this time humans wouldn't just be rescuers. They'd be warriors." Elias Vance stood at the edge of the ruined city, the glow of distant fires reflecting in his tired, battered eyes. The Kevreth were coming. The Theri had never won a war against them. But this time they had humans. And humans didn't run. ###the Kevreth are coming. The Theri's command center was a mess. Their holographic war table flickered with Kevreth troop movements, each red marker a sign of death marching toward them. "Their fleet is 3 hours away," a Theri officer stammered, his hands shaking. "They outnumber us 50-1. Vareshtel turned to Elias. "If we stay, we die." Elias crossed his arms. "Then we don't stay." Confusion rippled through the Theri. Elias tapped the holographic map. "The Kevreth are expecting you to hold the city. That's what you've always done, right? Dig in, defend, get slaughtered?" Silence. The truth was bitter. Elias grinned despite the pain lancing through his burned body. So we don't give them that fight. We change the rules. #### a human's plan. Elias pointed at the Valos Ridge, a jagged canyon system just outside the city. Kevreth armor is slow in rough terrain. Their exosuits are made for open battles, not tight spaces. He smirked. We drag them into the canyons. Force them into choke points. Turn their numbers into a disadvantage. Vareshtel's brow furrowed. We have no heavy weapons. You have me. More silence. Elias gestured to the Theri engineers. How many of your shield generators are still functional? A young Theri scientist hesitated. 2. But they're good. We rig them into traps. When the Kevreth push through, we overload the shields. Turn them into energy bombs. The room was dead silent. The Theri had never thought this way before. They had always relied on their advanced tech. *** defensive shields, energy dampeners, careful tactics ***. But humans? Humans were chaos incarnate. And for the first time, the Theri understood why other species feared them. Vareshtel exhaled. You would make war like a Kevreth. Elias smirked. No. I'd make war like a human. ###. The ambush begins. The Kevreth arrived at dawn. Their armored walkers thundered into the burning city, expecting resistance. They found nothing. Then, from the canyons, the first explosions erupted. Kevreth warriors roared in confusion as fire and shrapnel rained down. The narrow passages forced them into bottlenecks, their advantage in numbers shattered. From the cliffs, Theri sharpshooters, guided by human tactics, picked them off. Then Elias joined the fight. ###. The Kevreth learned fear. A Kevreth warlord stepped into the canyon, towering over the battlefield. His armor was thick, his weapons humming with raw energy. His mandibles clicked as he laughed. The humans send a broken warrior to fight me? Elias cracked his knuckles. Not just one. From the shadows, more humans emerged. Kevreth warriors had never feared humans. Until now. Elias charged. And the battle changed forever. The Kevreth warlord was massive, easily 3 meters tall, wrapped in segmented armor so thick it looked like living metal. His 4 arms flexed, each gripping a weapon designed to crush, cleave, or incinerate. He had never lost a battle. Until now. Because standing before him was a human who refused to die. Elias charged. ###. A warrior unlike any other. The Kevreth warlord swung first, a plasma blade screaming through the air. Elias barely dodged, feeling the heat graze his shoulder. He countered, a brutal punch to the warlord's side. His gauntlet cracked against alien armor, but the Kevreth barely flinched. You fight like a beast, the warlord sneered. Wild. Reckless. Elias grinned through the pain. And you talk too much. Then he dropped a grenade at their feet. Boom. The shockwave hurled them both apart, but Elias had been expecting it. He rolled, came up swinging, and drove a blade deep into the Kevreth's shoulder joint. The warlord roared, more enraged than pain. But Elias wasn't done. He tackled the warlord, driving them both into the dust. The Kevreth were stronger. But humans? Humans never stopped. ###. The end of a warlord. The Kevreth warlord lashed out, knocking Elias aside. His breathing was ragged, mandibles clicking in fury. This is not possible, he growled. Humans are. Elias didn't let him finish. With one final, brutal lunge, he drove a salvaged Kevreth blade straight through the warlord's chest. The alien shuddered. His eyes widened in disbelief. And then the mighty Kevreth warlord fell. For the first time, a human had won. ###. Victory at a cost. The battle in the canyons raged for hours. But with their leader dead, the Kevreth fractured. Some fled. Others fought harder, but without their tactical advantage they were picked apart. By sunset it was over. The Theri stood among the rubble, looking at what remained of their home. The city was broken, but they had survived. Vareshtel approached Elias, who sat on a damaged supply crate, wrapping a crude bandage around his burned arm. You have done what no Theri ever has, Vareshtel said. His voice was full of something new. ***respect***. Elias smirked. You mean win? The elder nodded. And endure. Elias exhaled, looking over the battered battlefield. He could still hear the crackling of distant fires. They'll come back, he muttered. They always do. Vareshtel studied him for a long moment. Then, with quiet conviction, he said, Then we will be ready. And for the first time in history, the Theri were no longer just survivors. They were warriors. Thanks to a human who walked through fire. Epilogue. The Legend of Elias Vance. In the years to come, the Theri would tell stories of the battle. They would speak of the human who refused to fall. The warrior who fought through flames and fury. The one who taught them that strength was not in armor or numbers or weapons, but in the will to stand when everything else crumbled. And across the stars, in the dark corners of Kevreth war councils, they would whisper one name. A name that meant danger. A name that meant defiance. Elias Vance. And humanity was never underestimated again. The end.